the 1900s, the science world was getting excited about new petrochemicals and the ability to create a variety of new compounds from oil. Some of the first products derived from petrochemicals were plastics, but organic chemists knew that oil had the potential to create far more than plastic bags. With all the research done, it was found that drugs could be produced from petroleum. So the world's top oil man, who controlled the petroleum market, decided to use his influence to change the medical industry. In the early 1900s, there were a variety of doctors and healing methods in America. Some of the medical specialties included chiropractic, naturopathy, homeopathy, holistic medicine, and herbal medicine. To eliminate the competition, Rockefeller used his massive wealth and influence and changed the game. Rockefeller purchased part of the German pharmaceutical company, IG Farben. You can look up this company's involvement in World War II. There's a lot to say about them. They're now known as Bayer. He hired a contractor named Abraham Flexner, and Flexner submitted a report to Congress in 1910. This is known as the Flexner Report. This report concluded that there were too many doctors in medical schools in America, and that all the natural healing methods which had existed for hundreds of years were now unscientific. Medicines used for thousands of years were now classified as alternative, and the new petroleum-based palatable drugs were declared the gold standard. And then gaining more control, Rockefeller then took control of the American Medical Association.
Make sure y'all active in the chat.
A report that Abraham Flexner submitted to Congress called for a standardization of medical information. Based on the report, Congress acted upon Flexner's recommendations and changed laws related to medical practice. With these legal changes in place, Rockefeller teamed up with Andrew Carnegie and started funding medical schools all over America on the strict condition that they only taught their curriculum. The medicine that he was in control of was now the standard of medicine. Through the power of their huge grants, this powerful team systematically dismantled the previous curriculum of these medical schools, removing any mention of the healing power of herbs or natural treatments. Teachings on diet and other natural, non-drug treatments were also completely removed from medical programs. Any mention of their healing power was erased from the medical textbooks. Medicine was changed from wellness and prevention to simply treatment. You're ill, take 2 of these and call me in the morning. We were moved from using the solutions Father gave us to heal us and moved to the solution that science provided us. Those that were against this change were silenced, and as time went by, people just did as they were taught. After removing traditional medicine from schools, Rockefeller made sure to secure his monopoly by launching a targeted smear campaign against his competitors. Homeopathy and natural medicines were discredited and demonized in the newspapers and other media of the time. Some doctors were even jailed for using natural medicine treatments, including treatments that had been used safely and effectively for decades before. In a very short time, medical colleges were all made uniform. All the students were taught the same allopathic system. Allopathic means science-based. Medicine was now defined as a process of prescribing patented drugs. A pill for an ill became the mindset of American medicine. And maybe you want to think that this was all done by Rockefeller because of money, but it was not that. His family was tasked with helping promote and create this new world order that we're headed to. And he used his influence to create a world that depended more on the God of this world than the God of the Bible. It was not about money. He had all the money he could ever have. The work of Rockefeller and Carnegie was a success. They crushed the underfunded grassroots competition and created our current medical system. A system of science-based medicine that we are never able to challenge and we must accept blindly. This system continues today, wherein Big Pharma makes large donations to medical schools in exchange for teaching the medical students to use their patented drugs. As part of this system, many alternative treatments
Buy the damn loadout. What are you doing, man?
Petroleum-based medicines might have been causing cancer. Rockefeller then founded the American Cancer Society in 1913.
Where are you that pussy for money? Like, nigga.
So now, even to this day, people
No,
with
not
cancer,
yellow.
no one can explain
I
to you
mean,
why
green. I wouldn't have dropped my
cancer
shit if you wasn't gonna do that.
There's no prevention,
Stop being
just
crazy.
treatment. Rockefeller is literally the father of modern medicine. And most people, including
It's
doctors,
like, my nigga,
don't have a
are you
clue.
that bad?
When I've talked to doctors and even surgeons, most don't even know about Rockefeller and his oil empire. So they definitely don't understand this history. It's the matrix.
Where is the
Like these
loadout?
elite families did with all the other industries, they hid themselves under the guise and control of major corporations, and they exerted their power and control through them. So now we don't talk about them, we just call it Big Pharma. The Rockefeller Empire, along with Chase Manhattan Bank, known as now JP Morgan Chase, owns over half of the pharmaceutical interest in the United States. So now, if we go back to Rockefeller University, look at what they have to say.
Nah. Let's stay at control center.
Bioscience is what
I don't
we
think
do.
we ready to do that.
Our singular focus
I
is
don't
on
think,
powering
yo,
the breakthrough
that's up.
that will transform
I say
medicine.
we stay control center
See,
till
they're transforming medicine.
we get them right.
Who we are. The world's leading biomedical research university. Rockefeller draws top scientists and graduate students from around the world in pursuit of one mission: to conduct science for the benefit of humanity. Our history. At the time of the Institute's founding, infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, diphtheria, and typhoid fever were considered the greatest known threats to human health. New research centers in Europe, including the Koch and Pasteur Institutes, were successfully applying laboratory science to increase our understanding of those and other diseases. Following their lead, the Rockefeller Institute became the first biomedical research center in the United States. A new kind of hospital. The Rockefeller Institute Hospital, crucial to the Institute's mission, opened in 1910, the first center for clinical research in the United States. It remains a place where researchers can link laboratory investigations with bedside observations to provide a scientific basis for disease detection, prevention, and treatment. Early on, researchers at the hospital studied polio, heart disease, and diabetes, among other diseases. This special hospital environment served as a model for dozens of other clinical research centers established over the next decades. It clearly controlled and steered our modern medicine. I went over this for you so you can see how intertwined the Rockefeller family is with our science and medicine. They are the pioneers and founders of modern science and medicine, and most people don't even know their history. Ask your doctors if they know this history. You will find that your trusted professionals are sheep, just like the rest. But just because they went to school longer, they want you to look at them as the genius, and they are smarter than you. But there is no independent thought today. It's all sheep being led by rules. So understand, all this modern science and research are not gifts from the God of the Bible. Modern medicine was made to push us away from dependency on the God of the Bible, our Father in heaven, and what He has given us to sustain ourselves. And now we are held to science. They do let us practice holistic medicines and talk about natural healings as long as it is accompanied with witchcraft. Alchemy and witches are able to practice this type of medicine freely. Medicine today is all about follow the leader. The doctors and nurses are not pioneers. They go to school to learn the education that the Rockefellers established. They treat what they are told, how they are told. And if you're one that wants to venture out and treat away from their ways of modern medicine with holistic medicines, this will not go well for you. The science and medical industry, like all other industries in this world, is controlled. And I just gave a small, brief breakdown of it so that you can understand how deep this all is. Satan is involved completely in our scientific and medical breakthroughs. But because people believe that God is involved, they believe it's all God helping humanity. It's Satan helping humanity to be rid of the influence and need for God. These scientists continuously push the envelope to make the case that we do not God of the Bible. All we hear today is, listen to the scientists. It's such a blanket phrase that people have adopted because they have grown up with an unquestioned trust in society. From our schools, from our jobs, we trust our professionals pretty much, no questions asked. But what we do not do is question who is funding the science and what are their goals. I don't think we're even allowed to doubt scientists at this time. So this video may not be on this platform for long. The goal is simple, and most people in this world have fell for it. Trust science because it comes from God. But the catch that people don't recognize is that the God they are talking about is Satan. Those that have been given massive power and wealth in this world were tasked with creating a world that will be ready to accept Satan as our God. It's not a
Being quiet's a little bit more my speed. Some good shit. Bring it around town. How long you gonna ride for me? How long you gonna shoot for me? I know you. Yeah.
Use this time to train deploying soon.
Yo.
Enough training. Now you fight a real enemy.
Yo. No!
He was just laying on the couch, just still, having bloody diapers every 30 minutes, and it's just very painful.
And it was just this change in his hormone, the body was turning itself inside out. The Beverleys took Michael to a hospital emergency room, where doctors discovered that his blood count had dropped to dangerous levels, his kidneys were failing, and life-threatening clots were forming in his blood. Acute blood diarrhea is an otherwise healthy child is an important medical problem, and physicians here and elsewhere work that up very aggressively, taking it very seriously. Michael's stool sample was sent to the laboratory for testing. Doctors were alarmed when they found a potentially deadly pathogen known as E. coli 0157. It's a bacteria usually found in the intestines of both humans and animals. When an individual becomes infected,
Oh my God!
E. coli 0157 infects more than 20,000 people each year, killing 500 of them.
Yo, bro, we about to win this, bro.
In 1993, 4 people died after eating E.
Dog
coli
father.
chicken
Yo,
hamburgers
are we about to
from
win
Jack in
this,
the
bro?
Box fast food chain. Fully cooking hamburgers can kill the E. coli bacteria, but these burgers had not been fully cooked. When they found out it was a strain of E. coli, and
heard.
the same strain that affected the kids in Jack in the Box, he said, yes, Michael has the same strain. I said, oh my God.
So
E.
which
coli
one?
157 is a widely disseminated vehicle, out in the population for general consumption. It's like a serial
Fuck Joe Biden.
Brianne Kiner was one of the children infected with E. coli 0157 from an undercooked hamburger purchased at the Jack in the Box restaurant. She was in a coma for 6 weeks. The E. coli produces cytotoxins which kill other cells, breaking through the layer of the intestines, spilling poisons into the bloodstream.
Damn, bro, I fucked up.
That complication is called
Don't die.
hemolytic uremic syndrome. Although Brianne Kiner eventually came out of her coma, most of her major organs
They're right up
were
there.
damaged, and she'll need a kidney transplant when she's older.
Alright, here we go.
Michael Beverly
Now I'm about to go
developed
crazy.
hemolytic uremic syndrome, which can cause brain damage, kidney damage, sepsis, and death. Doctors immediately placed Michael on kidney dialysis to cleanse his body of toxins. Hemolytic syndrome is life-threatening. Of all the kinds of diarrhea a child, an otherwise healthy child, can get in North America, almost none will cause a death, could cause a death, except this. That's why this one is so fearsome once it gets into a person.
shit.
DNA testing.
When we say ROYALE 157, it's a very large clan, very large family, tribe in the E. coli species. When we do genetic fingerprinting, we can go to the individuals in that family. So instead of saying that someone was someone with the last name of Smith killed someone else, we can say that John Smith with social security number of such and such, living in such and such place, committed the crime.
Like human beings, a pathogen like E. coli has its own genetic fingerprint. Using what is called micro-restriction fingerprinting, the E. coli samples were placed in a buffer of restriction enzymes which break the cells open. Then, DNA strands are cut into smaller pieces, making them easier to analyze. The fragments are placed into a gel with a dye. And after a process called electrophoresis, genetic profile appears similar to a barcode. The results indicated that all of the E. coli strains were the same. In other words, all of the individuals had been infected from the same source.
We had 9 patients that had E. coli 157, the same genetic fingerprint. Definitely that shows that you have a growing outbreak.
E. coli 0157 has a long incubation period, 5 to 7 days, far longer than most foodborne illnesses. Dr. Russ Alexander's job was to figure out what was
That
caused
shit has no accuracy.
The standard method is to employ what's called a case control study. Investigators questioned all of the patients' families to find out what the victims had consumed 5 to 7 days before first developing symptoms.
Damn, bro.
Compared those answers to what others in the same family consumed who were not infected.
I really think it was that this was probably a weak sauce because that's what mostly is what it is. So we looking for everything they've eaten and what kind of restaurants they've been to, what kind of fast food restaurants in particular.
But the initial interviews did not reveal any one food item that all had consumed.
There was something in common with these individuals that made these individuals ill. On the other hand, the preliminary interview did not produce any obvious sources of infection.
But when investigators looked more carefully over their initial results, they found a clue. One of the sick children was a vegetarian.
We had this one case that was a clear-cut case. It was a vegetarian family, and there was no chance of any meat in this particular instance. So we quickly realized we were into something else.
This time, another more detailed questionnaire was designed with meat excluded as the possible cause. The new questionnaire centered on fruits, vegetables, dairy products, and related food sources.
Not until we had got enough cases coming in with this extended questionnaire that we began to see something else that was in terms of the source. By the end of the week, we were already pretty sure that there was one thing that was standing out.
The second set of interviews revealed that the victims had all consumed apple juice. But with hundreds of brands on the market, investigators feared it would be difficult to find out which one. When Seattle health officials discovered that apple juice was consumed by the E. coli patients, they needed to find out which brand, and there were hundreds of brands on the market. But their next clue came from an unexpected source. In Denver, Colorado, doctors were treating a desperately ill 16-month-old girl named Anna Gimestad. Anna also had an E. coli 0157 infection, and her parents told doctors that they had been in Seattle just 1 week earlier. The Gimestads recalled feeding Anna some apple juice, a brand she preferred because of the bright rainbow colors on the label. Odwalla. The Beverly family also recalled feeding their son Michael the same brand from a neighborhood coffee shop.
This one particular Sunday, I went up and stood in line and, to order our drinks, and I saw them prepare it, that's when you use ODWALA for the kids, and they go, yeah. Oh,
Further investigation revealed that the other victims also consumed ODWALA apple juice 5 to 7 days before developing symptoms. The ODWALA Company manufactures and distributes juice products in 7 states and British Columbia. It's a brand known for its freshness. Most fruit juices are pasteurized, which means they're heated to a temperature high enough to kill any bacteria. But ODWALA juice was not pasteurized. The company believed that pasteurization hurt the taste of their juice. The company's mission statement read, "If it's not fresh squeezed, then it's not ODWALA." Just 9 days after the outbreak, health officials asked the ODWALA Company to voluntarily remove their product from store shelves. The company complied, even though there was no conclusive proof that ODWALA was the source of the outbreak.
As you know, immediately upon hearing of the possibility of consumer health risks, we recall our products containing apple juice. Our primary concern is for the health and welfare of our consumers.
The news that the source may have been apple juice was little relief to the Gimstad family in Evans, Colorado. 16-month-old Anna was taken a turn for the worse. Like some of the other victims, Anna developed hemolytic uremic syndrome, a complication of the E. coli infection that produces toxins that shut down the kidneys. Less than 2 weeks after Anna Gimstad consumed the ODWALA apple juice, she died. For the Beverleys, news of Anna Gimstad's death was terrifying.
There was a 16-month-old that died. I was very just I knew I thought he was going to die. To be frank, I said, he's going to die.
And although investigators discovered that all of the affected individuals had consumed ODWALA juice, there was no proof that the juice was the source of the outbreak. The proof, if there was any, would be in the juice itself. Thousands of bottles of ODWALA juice were tested for E. coli 0157, but the deadly pathogen could not be found. Medical investigators were starting to wonder whether they were ever going to find scientific proof that the apple juice was the source of the outbreak. All of the E. coli victims remember drinking ODWALA apple juice shortly before getting sick, but investigators couldn't find the E. coli bacteria in any of the ODWALA juice bottles they tested. But on November 4th, 1996, at the ODWALA Distribution Center, investigators found 1 bottle of apple juice that tested positive for E. coli 0157. The question now was whether the bottle contained the same strain that caused the death of Anna Gimstad and infected Michael Beverly and the other children. To find out, investigators turned once again to DNA testing. The DNA profile on the left is the E. coli strain of Michael Beverly. On the right, the DNA profile of the E. coli found in the bottle of ODWALA apple juice. The profiles were identical. Scientific proof that the ODWALA juice was the source.
Identified the same genetic information as the coli. The bottle of unopened ODWALA juice given them an estimated 40,000 of these bottles. Not quite the DNA study finding an age of about 180 spread across
The label revealed the juice had been bottled on October 7th, 1996.
Let's go!
Before the outbreak.
Hey,
Company records identified the orchard.
we did it.
Were used to make the juice that day.
Got it, though. Let's get up out of here, bruh. We did it. Yo, let's run it again. Let's run it again. I think we both carried it, super chill. Bro, follow me on Twitch at BIRDMANFANCY, bro.
Along the edge of the orchard, there were a number of deer prints in the sand.
And near the deer prints were deer droppings, a potential source of E. coli 0157. Dr. Cody wondered whether some of the apples had fallen to the ground and come into contact with the
which were sent to the lab for testing. The E. coli from the deer droppings was then sent for DNA testing, but it did not match the E. coli strain that infected the 13 children.
It's possible that there could have been one deer or a number of deer that were shedding one strain or more than one strain. So perhaps we just isolated the wrong strain, or perhaps we got the wrong deer, perhaps we got the wrong orchard.
The Odwalla company says that it's against their policy to purchase apples that were picked up from the ground.
Even though Odwalla claimed to have documents, signed documents from their suppliers that they did not use ground apples or apples from the ground, we found that it's virtually impossible to verify that or to enforce it, especially when workers are paid by the bin.
And in 1996, the U.S. Army considered serving Odwalla juice to military personnel, but after an inspection of the Odwalla processing plant, military investigators stated that Odwalla's plant sanitation program does
Yes, it's regret is a huge part of this episode, and I watched this one live on television, or first run, I guess.
Yeah.
And I had known from the Samaritan Snare episode when Picard and Wesley take the shuttlecraft to get his heart fixed by Dr. Pulaski. He tells the story.
You fought them and won?
I had this one Nausicaan down in this somewhat devious joint lock when, unbeknownst to me, one of his chums drew his weapon and impaled me through the back.
Of how he got stabbed in the heart, and he looked down and he laughed.
In fact, I do actually remember that I laughed out loud.
And when I saw that scene, I was like, he's got to look down and laugh. And then it happened. I was like, okay. I'm watching your canon already, Star Trek The Next Generation.
I was an undisciplined, loudmouthed, opinionated young man who was way out of his league.
Quality callback.
It was accurate.
Yeah.
They knew their canon. They knew it as they were writing it.
That show was on its fucking A game, man.
Senior officers, please report to the captain's ready room.
Acknowledged.
There's some touches of humor. I love when Picard realizes in the future that he's a nobody.
Yeah.
And he, Mr. Picard, and he's asking, what year is it, Worf? Who's the captain of this ship? And they're just like, the fuck? And he's like pleading with Riker to give him a chance, and
Nah, it's too late. You roll.
And Riker's just desperately searching for compliments. He's like, you're punctual.
Punctual?
And he does this look on his face. See, that's all these little moments. When Riker and Troy are kind of talking to Picard, and they're giving him an evaluation, even though it's in an appropriate time. Riker's just he's like, well, yeah, little human character moments, and that's stuff you don't get from modern Star Trek. Not to bring up the bad.
I don't know. I think it would have been better if Picard turned to the Nausicaan and said, "Please, friend, choose to live," and then pulled out a sword and just started decapitating everybody in the bar. That would have been better.
Yeah. And then Q's like, what?
Oh my God, what are you doing?
Nothing changed. I had this whole thing set up.
I was wrong about humanity. I have to destroy you all.
I like when the Nausicaan says to them, you talk and you talk. Like all Starfleet, you talk and you talk. But you have no grandma. But you have no grandpa. It's one of my favorite lines. Blu-ray. Star Trek.
I don't have the Blu-rays.
Well, here's the thing. You...
We about too late here.
And now, the conclusion.
My next episode is, we haven't had any matchups so far. So that's good. I'm kind of curious. Do you have on your list Chain of Command?
I do not.
You do not. All right.
I respect it. I like it, but it's not in my rewatchability.
That's fair. But I think it's got some things that are interesting to talk about.
Absolutely.
Which is why I bring it up. This is the famous "There Are Four Lights" episode of The Next Generation, where Picard is pulled from command of the Enterprise. He's pulled out of the captain's chair by Admiral Bicheyev, because they want Picard to go on a secret mission in Cardassian space.
Starfleet intelligence believes that the Cardassians are developing a metagenic weapon.
Oh my God.
And they need Picard, because he's got some knowledge on the subject, to go check this out. So they pull him from command, and then they bring in the villain from RoboCop, Captain Jellicoe, to take over the Enterprise. Presumably permanently.
It's not necessary to give Captain Jellicoe command of the Enterprise just to conduct a negotiation.
The Enterprise will be in a dangerous situation, and I want someone on the bridge who has a great deal of experience with the Cardassians. No offense, Commander, but that's not you.
And so then Picard goes on his mission with Crusher and Worf, and it's a trap. The Cardassians, those evil Cardassians, have set a trap to capture Picard, to extract knowledge from him.
Well, it's a good thing they didn't send 3 nobody Starfleet security guards to go on this mission. Instead of the captain of the flagship.
You know what? It would be a lamer episode if it were just a red shirt being tortured.
Well, that's why you send a 20-year-old Bajoran girl into Cardassian space on a secret mission, because they don't come back.
Okay. Anyway, Picard's captured. Picard is tortured, and it's two-parter about torture.
I don't enjoy this, but I must demonstrate. It will make everything clearer.
I think it's David Warner?
Yeah.
Plays the Cardassian?
Yeah, the famous...
British character actor.
He's in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
Star Trek VI, he was the villain in Tron. But he tortures Picard and interrogates him. And basically, he can't get any information out of Picard. And at some point, he knows that Picard doesn't have any useful information for him, but he just wants to break Picard for the sake of breaking him.
I've just received word. There's been a battle. The Enterprise is burning in space. The invasion of Minos Corva has been successful.
He just wants Picard to admit there are 5 lights when there are in fact 4.
Tell me how many lights you see.
He wants to dominate him.
He wants to utterly dominate him, and he completely dehumanizes Picard. He like, his like daughter comes in the room at some point, and like, oh yeah, how you doing? And didn't even care that his daughter is witnessing this man being horrifically tortured, because Picard doesn't. It's just a piece of meat.
But human mothers and fathers don't love their children as we do. They're not the same as we are.
The torturer, David Warner's character, from what I recall, it's all status for them, but on the inside, they're the weakling. They're the scared one. I think, from what I recall...
That happens in the episode.
Picard breaks him, basically, because they say, you've gone far enough, David Warner.
Well, he admits something that happened when he was a child that scared him. Oh no, this is why he's like explaining why the military is good, because before the military took over Cardassia, everyone was starving and things were terrible. And I was just a scared little boy. And then Picard points out, that's all I'll ever see when I look at you now. You're just a scared little boy.
Whenever I look at you now, I won't see a powerful Cardassian warrior. I will see a 6-year-old boy who is powerless to protect himself. Be quiet.
Lashing out.
Yeah.
It just infuriates him even more.
Right.
In spite of all you've done to me, I find you a pitiable man. Picard, stop it.
Captain Jellicoe takes over, and he is not laid back at all. He's like, things are going to be done like this. I want 4 shifts, and you got to get the shifts ready. I want them ready 4 minutes ago. And we're going to work extra twice as hard. And everybody on the Enterprise is used to the Enterprise, like before that, it's just like a luxury cruise liner. everyone just hanging out in bar and doing jazz, and suddenly there's this harsh taskmaster in charge. But I think what's interesting about it to me is normally in like a Star Trek episode, when the new authority figure comes in, it's usually an admiral, but they're always like the bad guy.
Yeah.
They're always evil, and our heroes have to take charge back from this commander who's just, they're off their gourd and they're doing terrible things. But
the Doomsday Machine episode of TOS.
That's the classic one.
The Admiral's nuts, and he's putting everyone in danger because he's just gone bonkers.
But
it's a twist with Jellicoe.
Chain of Command completely subverts that, because everything that Captain Jellicoe does is fucking right.
Mr. Worf, prepare to detonate. I will agree to your terms. Excellent.
This episode makes Riker look like such a fucking asshole, because he butts heads specifically with Riker.
Let's drop the ranks for a moment. I don't like you. I think you're insubordinate, arrogant, willful, and I don't think you're a particularly good first officer.
And Riker just comes off looking like this petulant brat.
Well, now that the ranks are dropped, Captain, I don't like you either. You are arrogant and closed-minded. You need to control everything and everyone.
But the truth is that Captain Jellicoe knows exactly how to handle the Cardassians. He knows when to bluff, how to bluff. We got him in the nebula, we got him right where we want him, we're going to do this. And the sad thing of that episode is when Captain Jellicoe has to come to Riker, because Riker is the best pilot on the ship, and they need a good pilot to lay the mines around the nebula. And he basically has to beg Riker to do his fucking job.
Will you pilot the shuttle, Commander? Yes. You're welcome.
It's just a very interesting choice that they didn't make Jellicoe the villain. And I'm wondering why they did that, if they just didn't want to just shake up what we normally do with the evil admiral.
Yeah.
I don't know what the thinking was behind it.
Yeah, normally it would be like a more conventional storyline would be Jellicoe's gone power mad because he has the flagship and he's just blowing everybody up. Riker,
oh no, what Jellicoe's doing is going to start a war. We have to, Commander Riker has to find a way to stop him from really ruining this situation.
Remove Captain Jellicoe from the bridge. I'm taking over. We're leaving this situation and we're going to rescue Picard.
Yeah.
But they let Picard go. Jellicoe solves the problem, and Riker realizes that there are different ways to do things.
The salt in the wound is that Jellicoe even manages to save Picard.
I understand you're holding a Starfleet officer named Jean-Luc Picard. I expect him returned immediately.
Even though he doesn't know, we gotta let Picard die. I mean, even after that, he still manages to save Picard. It is a shame he never came back. The other thing I wonder about this episode, why wasn't this the cliffhanger for season 6? The cliffhanger for season 6 was fucking Descent. Probably one of the worst TNG episodes or stories. And this would have been such a good cliffhanger because it similar to Best of Both Worlds, it leaves the question open as to whether or not they're going to shake up the status quo.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they are shaping up Jellicoe to be the new captain. Maybe we won't see Picard again.
I think they had a cliffhanger problem, 6 and 7-ish, because they also had Picard gets kidnapped and turned into a mercenary two-parter. I think that was supposed to be the 6 and 7 two-parter. And then they said, let's do Descent. And let's just put this in as a two-parter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of... we need something that's really good. What do we got?
Right, Tamara. The resonator cannot be stopped by phasers and shields.
Number 4, this is an official guilty pleasure episode. It is called Disaster.
Oh god, that's a very wait. No, that one's fine. I thought you were talking about the episode that was Die Hard on the Enterprise.
No. That's a guilty pleasure and a half. That episode, that's okay. I love Disaster. Tapestry was Quantum Leap. Disaster is more or less the Poseidon Adventure in space.
Yeah. It's patterned after a classic disaster movie.
Yeah.
It's like the 70s.
Right, exactly. Like Poseidon Adventure or Towering Inferno or movies like that. There's personal drama, there's action, ship tech stuff, and teamwork. Conflict, yes. So the episode starts off with Picard. This is another kind of a famous Picard episode because he's trapped in an elevator with 3 children.
Well then,
This one starts off on the bridge. O'Brien's there, Troy's there. There's a lieutenant lady who's like the highest rank. Because like Miles O'Brien has like no rank.
always good to meet another Chief Petty Officer, Sergei Rozhenko, formerly of the USS Intrepid.
Miles Edward O'Brien, sir. Good to meet you.
He's the transporter technician.
Yes, and so Picard leaves the bridge with 3 kids who won the science fair contest and gets in the turbolift, and they run into a quantum filament, some sort of space anomaly that fucks the ship up royally. So you have a wonderful little action scene where everything's like shaking and exploding, and you have, I think, is it 4 or 5 different scenarios of survival in different parts of the ship, where there's interpersonal drama and conflict. Most importantly, bridge, send forward, Picard in the turbo lift, and then Riker and Data trying to stop the ship from blowing up. And I love it. It's fun. It's adventurous. Oh, and Beverly Crusher and Geordie LaForge in the cargo bay. So there's all these great little moments in it.
I'm live right now,
you know, it's
bro.
not the most thought-provoking
Crack,
episode.
going crazy.
It doesn't deal with ethics or, it's just a fun disaster episode that has a lot of nice little details.
Yeah.
And as I rewatched it, I really enjoyed kind of picking up on more details. You start off with, Troy's on the bridge, and I wanted to mention, you talked about chain of command.
Yeah.
After that, she started wearing a proper uniform, because
Jellicoe gave her a dressing down.
Yes, he yelled at her. He's like, why are
No!
I prefer a certain formality on the bridge. I'd appreciate it if you wore a standard uniform when you're on duty.
And
Put on a fucking uniform.
And eventually Troy takes a test to become a commander, because in this she carries the rank of lieutenant commander, and she doesn't even know it. Miles O'Brien mansplains her own rank to her.
I believe Counselor Troy is the senior officer on the deck.
Counselor Troy?
She carries the rank of lieutenant commander.
Because she's in command of the Enterprise. She's the ranking officer on the bridge. And so her situation is, she's wise, but it is a nice little framing device, and her family.
What we do today may profoundly affect the future.
And to stop the volcanoes from going off, because they're like, okay, well, all these volcanoes are going to kill everyone on the planet. We're like,
is it really interference if they're all going to die if we do nothing? Yeah,
that's the way it's got to go.
So what are you proposing?
If we can determine the cause of these geological disturbances, we might be able to reverse the process.
Violate the Prime Directive?
But where it's like a civilization is so primitive and there's some kind of disease, or you can't just go down and cure the disease and leave.
She's going to die. They're all going to die. Unless.
Because that's the natural progression of their society. Their culture might have died out. They could create warp drive at some point. That's really I think that's the big thing, is once you create warp drive, that's when.
Yeah, that's when you're going to run into other species anyway.
You're officially it's on the map.
Finally time to just show up and give everybody a briefing, which is another one of my favorite episodes. Didn't quite make the list. First Contact. The other First Contact.
Yes, Riker is found out as a secret alien.
Yeah.
Your arrival will change our entire understanding of life.
But yeah, where it's like a civilization is so primitive and there's some kind of disease, or you can't just go down and cure the disease and leave.
She's going to die. They're all going to die. Unless, yes, unless.
Because that's the natural progression of their society. Their culture might have died out. They could create warp drive at some point. That's really I think that's the big thing is once you create warp drive, that's when.
Yeah, well, that's when you're gonna run into other species anyway.
You're officially
so it's
on the map.
Finally time to just show up and give everybody a briefing, which is another one of my favorite episodes. Didn't quite make the list. First Contact. The other First Contact.
Yes, Riker is found out as a secret alien.
Yeah.
Your arrival will change our entire understanding of life. And some will not want it to change.
Also, a slight nod to kind of a funner episode when Data crash lands and gets covered in radiation, and he just wanders into a primitive town and goes, meh. And he forgets who the fuck he is, and he starts telling them things.
He gives everybody radiation poisoning.
Yes.
Lots of good Star Trek.
I love when he interferes with the ladies' class. She's like, everything comes from the 3 elements: fire, wood, and water.
I do not believe that is correct.
Oh?
I believe you are reasoning by analogy, classifying objects and phenomena according to superficial observation rather than empirical evidence.
Actually, everything you're teaching them is wrong. He's irradiating the whole town, and they're like, oh boy, they show up. Accidental Prime Directive.
Yeah.
Mishaps are a lot of fun episodes, and this is certainly a classic one.
This is a classic one. Also, it's fun just seeing the races meet Starfleet for the first time. Like you get to see aliens from the aliens' perspective in a way.
Yeah.
Because we are the aliens visiting them. Yeah. And that's always fun when that happens on these shows. Something else I like about this episode is it's refreshing to me that Star Trek puts no value in the concept of faith. Star Trek is all about reason and rationality triumphing. And like this episode illustrates that because the thing in this episode is like, oh my God, we've given these people a belief system. We have to fix this grievous error at any cost.
We have a problem. The contamination. It's worse than we suspected. The Mintakans are beginning to believe in a god. And the one they've chosen is you.
And that's fun to me.
They don't just leave?
Yeah, they don't just leave. It's like, well, they believe in something now.
You mean they just don't skip town like Luke Skywalker and Han Solo did? Forever altering the Ewok culture? As thousands of years later, there are statues of C-3PO on a cross.
But Picard is willing to give his own life to stop these people from believing in something.
Yeah, he gets shot with an arrow.
Yeah.
But if the only proof you will believe is my death, then shoot.
Lingo, don't do it, Father, no!
He proves to them that he is human. Do they wipe their memories at the end? I don't remember.
No, that's pen pals.
Yeah.
This one, they reference pen pals. They try to wipe the memory of the guy who saw Picard, and it just doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
Brain's too different.
Eventually,
what happens is Picard takes the I don't know if she's a tribal leader, but one of their higher ups in their culture up to the starship, and he just wants to explain to her. He's trying to explain to this person what technology is. Like, no, none of this is magic.
Mm-hmm.
Because they keep wanting Picard, can you bring back our dead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he eventually takes her to the sick bay where one of the anthropologists dies from the wounds when the base exploded. He's like,
oh yeah,
I can't bring back.
That's right. It's been a while since I've seen this one.
He has a good little speech where he's like, "Oh, in your past, people used to live in caves, right? Yes, they live in houses now. Things progress." It's not a mind-blowing episode. It's not an epic episode. It's a standard Star Trek TNG episode in that golden era of like seasons 3 through 5, where like almost every episode was perfect.
Yeah.
And it represents all of that to me. That episode.
It's an encapsulating episode.
Yeah.
It's a figurehead episode.
Prime directive, ethics,
aliens, magic,
non-violent problem solving.
That's I like Who Watches the Watchers as well. They redo that secret insurrection, the secretly hidden observation window in Insurrection. But yeah, there's a handful of episodes like that where they infiltrate an emerging alien culture.
Yeah.
To study them, and then they get caught. And there's a couple of reverses where advanced alien cultures infiltrate them.
It's basically the opposite of what Kirk would have done in the original series. I remember an episode of Star Trek, the original series, where they're dealing with a primitive culture that doesn't have space travel, and Kirk like starts reading them the Constitution of the United States. We the people. This document says we the people. You can get away with that shit back then.
Yeah, 1960s, sure. Picard was a better diplomat than Captain Kirk.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He was the cowboy. Picard was the diplomat. That's a lot of TNG talk, Rich.
Oh God, yeah. We didn't. You know what the shocking thing is? We didn't have one overlap.
I know, that's weird.
That's
weird. We both like our. You didn't really have any too many guilty pleasures.
Not really.
No.
It's not that it's not like I don't like these episodes. This list might even change if I had the time to sort through and rewatch every episode properly.
Sure. I would consider Cause and Effect kind of a guilty pleasure episode. It's not really like a big thinker, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's neat. But yeah, you got to have your Prime Directive. You got to have your Picard speech episode.
Oh my God! Everybody on